Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Partnerships and Pints. Today, you just have me, no Lucas, but I'm on the road in Vegas, so also no pint. Instead, I just have a pint of Starbucks. I'm here with Barrett King. Barrett is the head of alliances at Ramp. Good morning, Barrett.
Good morning. Actually, it's very early now that I realize you're still in Vegas. So good extra morning, I'll say to you.
Yeah, no, here for shop talk. So about
That's
to get out there and hit the floor, meet a few retailers. We're here with our CEO,
Cool.
Sean, so it's going to be a blast. Barrett, just to start, would love to kind of start with a bit of an intro. Maybe kind of what was your role include at Ramp? How did you end up at Ramp? And maybe a little bit about how you ended up in partnerships kind of overall.
Yeah, so I'll go with where I'm at now first because I think it sets the stage for the story. The short version of it is, I joined Ramp because I saw that there was a mission here to save folks time and money. And that's public knowledge. I think what's interesting about it though is how we do that. And so our platform, we're really fortunate, is innovative and unique and delivers a ton of value just in its own way. But as the head of Alliance, I get to work with a variety of different partner types, and the folks on my team get to spend their time thinking about ways to help companies grow their business, grow their impact on their customers, and drive value certainly mutually when we think about how we can grow together. Alliances here is ERP, HRIS, and ISV, sort of top-down technology partnerships. And then we've got a services partner business we've developed where we help other organizations go to market with us and help obviously our mutual customers. And so we get this nice sort of surround sound of value in terms of being able to deliver, again, the mutual customer story for the ERPs and the HRIS organizations we work with, but then go to the businesses that are actually working frontline with our customers and help those services organizations, those consulting firms, those go-to-market teams actually help our mutual customer get that value in an accelerated way. For me, partnerships was never intentional. I think I've said this on recording before, but I'll say it again. I think like a lot of us, it is sort of a calling in many ways at the risk of sounding a bit dramatic. I have a design degree, and when I graduated college, I actually went into restaurants because there were no jobs. It was 2008. The economy wasn't doing great. And I found my way into hospitality. And so I worked my way through the ranks and ended up becoming GM and opening some restaurants and really had a great experience. But during that time, a lot of my sort of like the ancillary responsibilities was developing relationships, cultivating a dynamic with a local, like, for example, there was a Fidelity office nearby. We did a lot of catering and private parties for them. Those are partnerships. Those were my sort of early, like, toe dip into the water of partnerships. And then, after that, subsequently, a lot of the roles that I held in SaaS were in and around either direct sales with a partnerships component or inevitably about, I'm going to date myself here, about 13 years ago or so, I joined HubSpot 12, 13 years ago. Early, partner hire in that sense, and did a bunch of different things in partnerships during my tenure there. So, for me, partnerships has been really the core part of my professional career, and obviously where I get excited about it. And Ramp is a great place to do that, recognizing that we've got a really cool opportunity, like I described.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, to touch a little bit on Ramp, because I think, and kind of to dive straight in,
Sure.
The thing Ramp is, I think, famous for beyond delivering an incredible product is delivering an incredible product at speed.
Yeah.
Like, you guys have built a huge amount of world-class business, world-class product in a very, very short period of time. And of course, the revenue and the venture funding reflects that. How do partnership programs that historically take time to build?
Yeah.
We just signed a new partnership this week at Shop Talk, and we've been talking to them for a year and a half at this point. How do you build a partner program that can move at the velocity that a company like Ramp does? What goes into making sure you can keep up with the pace of the business?
I think there's a couple components that are important to keep front and center. And I just talked about this the other day on my own content, but a lot of organizations early on talk about, well, how do we make it more effective? How do we get, to your point, their sort of speed to value accelerated to where we are? One is early partner market fit. When you look at where most organizations fail, they might have product market fit. Folks buy their stuff. They, repeat buy, they stick around. They might have early go-to-market fit. They've got sales folks, CS folks, so those customers can be sold in a repeated way and they can be serviced in a repeated way. The challenge typically then is that they sort of divert from that ideology and they go and look for partners that are not a part of that streamlined approach to the way that we go to market. We didn't do that. Like, our early first partners were accounting firms. It's very logical. We had a solution that helped companies save time and money by managing their expenses and certainly aligning the way that they close their books each month and go to market in terms of their financial situation. naturally you would think a CPA firm, a business like that was a good first step. And it was. And so one of the things that I always talk about, regardless of it being at Ramp, is that time to value for partnerships typically comes from proximity to your customer. If they are already working with your customers or around your customers, then the hop, skip, and jump to making them a partner isn't that big. A lot of early partner leaders, so they try and force it. I want a partner that does X or Y. Instead of asking the market, what kind of partners do we need? What kind of partners should we look for? And most likely they're already there. You just need to go and connect with them and have a conversation. I think we did a really nice job early on. It's what drew me here in terms of the early opportunity. The next iteration of our program was FI organizations, so VC PE firms. Similar dynamic to accounting groups where these folks were already working with our customers to help them grow, right? If you think about the PE firm buys a company or VC invests, both of those dynamics are pretty straightforward in that they're trying to help that business get better, more effective, better cash flow positive, all things that we help with our platform. The third iteration, which is where I sit in alliances, was sort of the natural progression of that conversation. So we're, call it 3.5 years into the partner program, where call it about 2.5 years in is where alliances was born. About 3 years in is where it started to actually flourish. And that was because we recognized that our businesses that we were working with, our customers, needed something more than just an acquisition motion and an onboarding, if you will, setup. They needed integration, development, ongoing support of the platform. And it's how we've been able to go to market with services partners that are in these ecosystems now. So if you think about like a Sage or a NetSuite or an ADP or any of these organizations that we actually work with, they already work with partners. And so I think for us, naturally, there was another extension of growth where we could go and say, you're already in this dynamic part of the way that our customers get value. Why don't we teach you how to use our platform? And then they win, right? They get more revenue and value they can deliver per customer. They keep those customers longer. They can prove their ROI more effectively. All good things for our partners. So there's that continuation of speed to value that naturally occurs. And then we're also not starting from scratch to try and say it's a new market. These businesses already are there. Let's just attach onto their go-to-market strategy in the way that they're servicing a customer base, happens to be our mutual one. And then let's make it really easy. And that's my kind of third point is don't reinvent the wheel. You see a lot of early partner folks say, well, how do we create the content at scale? Like, well, you've already done that. If you've got go-to-market fit, certainly product market, but go-to-market fit, you already have enablement. You already have reporting. You already have sales tools. Those things, you should just give them to your partners. And the mistake that I see folks make is they don't. They try and rebuild something or rebrand something, or a lot of our early enablement for the services partners are literally the campaigns that we run or the tools that we use. We just package it up in an easy to consume way and we give it to them and empower them to go to market alongside us. It makes a difference.
Yeah. I mean, it brings, I guess, a slightly new twist to PMF. Instead of product market fit, you've got partnership market fit effectively.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's something we've seen, Lucas leads our partnerships team. And I think it's something he's seen is that proximity factor. For us, we partner with sales teams who are blocked by integrations. About 30% of a SaaS company's pipeline is generally blocked due to some integration reason, whether that's a missing integration or an integration that doesn't do what they want. And so by partnering with them, we pull ourselves so close to the end customer because it's their customer they're trying to serve. And as you said, it becomes that mutual beneficiary that kind of fits. And that it's allowed us, I mean, we've signed Deal, the kind of global HR payroll provider. We are kind of in conversations with a number of large other payroll providers, all of whom are much larger organizations than ourselves because of that proximity that I think you touched on. So interestingly, so you mentioned the Alliances program started, well, the Partnerships program started 3 years ago, and Alliances has kind of followed on from there. Partnerships, of course, at the moment is getting a huge amount of visibility. LinkedIn, Twitter, follow any of these partner leaders, they're just constantly posting. When is the right time to start a partnership program? And do you think that's changed in any way with these kind of more modern AI first startups that are starting to come up and are gaining a lot of funding very, very quickly?
I think right time is a relative question. I'm a big proponent of those two go-to-market fits being checkboxed first, product market and go-to-market fit. I think the mistake you see most, in particular, like high growth companies, AI, SaaS, technology, or otherwise, is they show up and they're like, we know that partnerships is a better LTV to CAC. We know it's going to help us go faster. Let's just do it first. You're like, well, your product doesn't work very well yet. Your customers aren't really defined. That's a typical mistake. The other is that the go-to-market fit around sales is yet to be defined. I've seen this more and more. I've had folks reach out to me on LinkedIn even and say like, hey, we don't have a salesperson yet. We want to hire a partner leader. I'm like, oh, it's a little sketchy. Because the truth is like your partners are never as invested as your internal teams are. And so, you can do all the things in the world to make this dynamic correct, but it's not going to be successful if you don't set it up for that success. I think you got to be somewhere between, call it a year and 36 months, like call it 1 to 3 years in business, have some of those boxes checked and be in a good spot in terms of being able to prove that the work that you're doing, could be and should be done by somebody else. And that's typically for me the sort of line in the sand. You see sales leaders or like CRO, CEO types say things like, but it's better for us economically. It helps us grow faster. And those are all fair points and they're true. But if you don't have the foundation defined in terms of how we actually do this successfully and make it a repeatable way, it's just spinning your wheels at that point. I think from an optics perspective, you are seeing partner motions and sort of partner programs become the fancy new shiny object. Folks are finally paying attention to the work that we do every day. I think because of that, there are more questions than there are answers, and that's totally fair. But it, for me, at its core, sits in the numbers. Like I learned in the last 10 years of my career or so, that so much of what we do needs to be data-driven and be very intentional in terms of how we actually think about doing something in a repeatable way. That if the early data shows that, you could consider a partner, things like our sales teams are overperforming, things like our customers have a demand we can't meet, there's some sort of directional insights there, then I say test it. And so my answer would be like, it's less about timing and more about opportunity. If you can go and find 3 to 5, not 30 to 50, 3 to 5 businesses that are proximity wise close to your customers that are likely using your platform or doing something around what you do, go test it with them. It's that the scientific method. Like your hypothesis is if I work with these folks, run the experiment, go work with them. And at the end of that 90 days, call it, maybe it's 6 months, you've got enough data to say like, all right, we found a partner. They came in, we taught them something that we needed help with or that they could do better for us. They did it. And then it repeated. Like we were able to have them, execute that behavior more than once and or acquire more partners to also execute that behavior. That's your first box check. And that could take you 6 months. That could take you 3 years. Just depends on your market and your product and everything else. Once you've got that, you run the experiment, you've proven it can be done, then you have an early partner opportunity. It's not a program for like a year or two. Folks love to call it that, but like go and acquire 10 partners that next year. Make that your goal or whatever the number is. Do it again. Like, did it repeat? Did it work? Are we getting value? Is it continuing? Okay, it is. Now we go and think about how we build this thing from a scale perspective. We hire more channel managers or channel team members. We acquire at a faster rate. We go faster. I think the mistake though is that folks skip that like early experimentation, figure out how to do it part. And they assume that just by like signing a partner agreement, we're going to partner together. And that just never works.
Yeah. I mean, the timing thing has been super interesting for us. We are definitely not at a fully fledged go-to-market fit status yet. Like we now very much know what our ICP is. We know how to serve that ICP, but the signals to find that ICP at the like integrations, it's such a frustrating product to buy. People buy it once, whereas the market seems to perceive it as if they buy it continuously, and it's not a continuous product. It's a buy once, get it done, never look at it again, put it in a box type thing. And so like for us, learning timing has been critical. Interestingly though, so you mentioned the kind of rush to go out and hire a partnership leader, but from what you just said, it sounds like really that partner leader should come from within sales, at least initially.
They could. Possibly. So what I like to look at is people talk about how do you sort of quantify, qualify a business's stage. I always thought of it as like build, grow, scale, like building their go-to-market and building their foundations, growing their opportunity, growing their impact, scaling their teams and process. But each of those really is dependent on sophistication. And I think when you look at early partner hires, they should be entrepreneurs. They should be creatives. They're not partner, like I'll use myself for an example. Like I'm not a first partner hire. I have no interest in doing that. I've been that. I don't want to do it again. I don't want to go and like grind out the call every partner, figure out if it works. But I really enjoy the next stage. I really enjoy like we've got 5 or 10 or whatever partners. We can go build something here. That's where I'm most excited because I'll jump in and bring, partner business perspective, and we'll think about how we do scale. And like if you ask my leader here, he always jokes about like you are one of the most process oriented people because it's how my brain functions. Like I think in terms of program. I don't think in terms of like spread everything out and hope that it works.
Yeah.
I think what matters most is less about so like 3 buckets, right? One is like, do you have industry experience in terms of the vertical that you work in? One is like product specific experience if you work with a similar or the same product. And the third is like role specific. You don't need the product. So maybe you don't need to be a salesperson of that company, but you need industry. I've worked with other, B2B SaaS companies. I've also been a partner leader or whatever. Like you got to think about those 3 buckets and they don't have to all be full, but at least one does. And another one has to be mostly. And so you can sort of mix and match. Most sales reps don't make great partner people early. They can transition usually later on because you have ways of, sort of assimilating knowledge and sharing insights. But I think your early sales superstars can contribute to your partner strategy because they understand the sales dynamic and they can actually help your first partner hires go to market really effectively together.
Yeah. No, it's we're right at that stage, I think, where interestingly where you would fit in the sense of like we have the 5 to 10. We're starting to see them come through and consistently print dollars for themselves and for us. And there's kind of probably within that 5 to 10, 2 or 3 that are really ramping that we feel like we've really hit that kind of that point of inflection.
Yeah.
And now it's about, in fact, literally the meeting I have in 10 minutes is how do we package this into a kind of overall campaign that fits against our other kind of growth kind of campaigns, and how do we kind of begin to fill the top of the funnel with more partners for that exact reason. And part of that question then becomes is who do we bring in to support that function, and are they from sales or are they from partnerships or completely kind of outside of the box?
Probably somebody outside the company, probably somebody who's done it at a similar business and or similar industry based organization, and then they'll bring that context and they'll bring some of that like seen the plays before, right? Seen this part of the game. They're 5, 7, 10 years ahead of where you are right now. So even if you want to go faster, you can bring that knowledge back and they can tell you the story because they've already read the book.
Yeah. So the last question I have, and something we run into on a daily basis, is there are a lot of companies that still charge for that partner program. Now, these companies I generally find fit in the historical bucket in the sense of kind of pre-2010 founding. I'm curious, for a company like Ramp, where you guys have scaled to enterprise extremely quickly, and in theory could go out and charge for a partnership program, how do you look at charging for a partner program in today's market? Is it something that you still think is a good strategy? It's a very broad question, but I ask because I feel like you do not see modern companies charge for partner programs anymore. And so I'm curious kind of how you think about that, particularly as you guys scale at Ramp.
Yeah, I mean, I think to keep it really simple, it is a bit situational. I was at a company earlier on in my career that made every partner pay, and there was a ton of friction. I think some organizations, to your point, that were founded pre-2010, 2015, that 5-year window, they do show up differently because they looked at partnerships as another revenue stream. So they actually made money off those partners coming in. And in some ways, it supplemented the cost of the resources they put on that problem. I do think when you look at the scalability of assets and of people now, because of how fast technology is accelerated, you can call it AI, you can just call it better tools. I think because of that, it's easier for one person to contribute the work of 3 to 5 and do it in a way that's cost effective. And so there's perhaps a reduction of appetite there. The other part, though, I think that's important is what are you giving them in that early dynamic? Like, do you give them your tools? I can understand there's a cost with that sometimes. I don't judge that business, and that's fine, and I'll just let it be what it is. I have an opinion certainly, but I'll leave it at that. I think if you can afford to give your partners the tools that you use and give it to them in a scalable way, you should, because they'll drink their own champagne that way and be very successful in telling their own story. It's not every partner program's opportunity. It's not every business's chance to do. But I do think at its core, you have to be intentional around the program versus the product and separate those two. You want to be a part of the program? Free, sign up, let's go. We'll give you all the resources that'll help you go faster. You want the tools, maybe you offer a discount or you do some sort of a partner package, or like, fine, there's something there to make it an incentive. So you can still get a bit of revenue from it, but you also think about the other side of the coin, which is like, hey, we really want them to use this because the more they do, the better and more effective they're going to be at helping us and helping our customers. And so therefore it makes sense to give it away. So I think it's a balance at the end of the day to answer your question. Like, I think there are worlds where it makes sense. And I personally believe that if it were my decision solely, if the economics make sense, I wouldn't charge for it. But I also, again, situationally understand where it's appropriate to do so.
Yeah. No, I think it's something we've wrestled with a lot early on because our initial partners have come often from customer conversations.
Sure.
Where
Totally.
there turned out to be a dynamic of our integrations are so variable because of the end customer we're serving. We can't buy a standardized integration. And that's where the idea of like, why don't we just partner with them and become the first phone call they make when they need an integration? Again, it's back to that proximity question or that proximity kind of concept. The dynamic that then put us in was the team would be like, well, we still kind of want the product because what happens if we can build an integration? And then it was, well, can we just have it because you're making money off our end customers?
Right.
But then by not charging them, it then became really hard to invest in them as such because our cost rate is, or our revenue line per integration is so low. And so it's been a really interesting dynamic to work out. I think, like you said, what we've kind of ended up on is really splitting product and process. We will invest 150% in enabling that partner to kind of have the most seamless integration strategy they can have. But if they want the product, we'll happily give it to them at a discounted rate. But there has to be a angle of revenue there simply to cover of the basic
tier status, a contribution level. Yeah, exactly. That makes sense to me. Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome.